Hey MVPs, Rico Knows here. Going to talk to you guys about the 2024 win totals for Tennessee. I've done every single team in America as we go alphabetical by conference. I did South Carolina yesterday. If you want to see any of the previous teams done, just go on Patreon or YouTube and search the playlist. We're on futures bets. We're looking at win totals for 2024. And we're on the Tennessee Volunteers. First thing I want to say is the books have them at 9.5 wins. That means, are they going to win 10 games or are they going to win less? And you see it here. It is very good odds. You're getting a lot of money if you think they're going to win 10 games or more. And you're getting really, really crappy odds of minus 160, meaning you can really bank on that they're going to be on the under. I'll be talking to you guys about that in this video. Let's go. Looking at them last year, they beat Virginia in dominant fashion. That typically happens when they step outside of the SEC. They beat whoever they play. They beat Austin Peay, who's a pretty good team, coached by Scotty Walden, now the head coach at UTEP. And then they were at Florida on the road. And this is where the wheels really fell off 1 week into the season. I remember vividly picking Tennessee in this game. They were maybe 14-point favorites, and they go out there and get spanked. We lost a ton of money on this. I thought they would cover the spread. They went into the swamp and were not ready. Then they show up, beat the crap out of UTSA, dominate South Carolina, have a bye week, 2 weeks to prepare, edge out A&M by 7 points, get on the road against Alabama, lose like usual, go on the road at Kentucky, win by 6, then run into UConn, dominate in embarrassing fashion, go on the road to Missouri, probably should have saved some of their touchdowns, looked hapless against Missouri, absolutely terrible, going against Georgia, another bad outing, and then stomping out Vanderbilt, winning their bowl game against a terrible Iowa team, and it was 35-0. Iowa had no offense, and Tennessee had athletes. So when you look at it, they lost 4 games, and of the 4 games they lost, I would say one of them is an inexcusable loss. The rest of these, we understand. You lose on the road to Alabama, on the road to Missouri, and then losing to Georgia at home. What I will say about that is no one really saw Missouri being that great last year, but after looking at it in hindsight, you're like, okay, I'll take that loss. So they ended up winning 9 games in the entire season, but only 8 in the regular season. So they somehow are expected to win 10 games next year. Think about that. 10. That's 2 more than they won last year, okay? Now, looking at their stats and who they have and who they don't have, quarterback Joe Milton's gone. They have Nico Iamaleava. So, Nico, theoretically, is an upgrade. Nico has had no adversity as a quarterback. He looked sharp in the spring game 2 years ago, and he has a good completion percentage. He looks like a good quarterback. So everybody's banking on Nico. I just saw it today. Somebody had him on a Heisman list, which would mean they think Tennessee's going to go undefeated. I don't know what they're doing there. But Nico's the quarterback. They have no other quarterback. Gaston Moore came over from UCF with Josh Heupel. That's a former walk-on. He played good in the spring game, but he's not any good. You can't have him. So they have no depth at quarterback whatsoever. Running back, Jalen Wright, goes to the NFL. Phenomenal running back. The guy behind him is Dylan Sampson. We know Dylan Sampson can play running back, okay? The rest of these guys are young, unproven guys, and they still look that way right now. 0 depth in the running back room. I don't believe in any of the younger players. Wide receiver, absolutely loaded. Absolutely loaded at wide receiver. Everybody's back. I'll show you guys on the depth chart. They're in a good place and a good position with their wide receivers, and they're actually pretty damn good. And they've got another great one in the transfer portal. We'll talk about it. Team's leading tackler, Elijah Herring, gone. Went to Memphis. Now, he wasn't a starter. He filled in the minute Pili went down with injury. Where's Pili? Keenan Pili, transfer, the real starting linebacker. He goes down with injury. In steps in Elijah Herring, and Elijah Herring plays out of his mind. Once Pili's coming back to the starting lineup, they inform Elijah Herring, hey, you're going back to the bench. I just led you in tackles. You're not putting me on the bench. I'm leaving. And he's at Memphis now, where he's actually wanted, needed, and desired. So they lose Elijah Herring, the team's leading tackler, but it's not like they lost their best or their most talented player by any means, okay? They do have a ton of production returning, and I'll talk about it when I go to the depth chart, okay? Looking at the transfer portal. Well, let's go look at the depth chart. So Brew McCoy, transfer from USC, well, from Texas, USC, and now at Tennessee. Been here a while. Good possession wide receiver, bigger guy. We all know he's good. Everybody's talked about it, but unfortunately for him, he's just never really panned out the way you envision being a dominant wide receiver. He's just good at possession wide receiving. He gets open and catches passes. Chris Brazzell's the other receiver, just came in from Tulane, 6'5", deep threat, superstar. Glad he showed up. That dude can play. Squirrel White, that's an NFL caliber wide receiver. I like all three of these guys. They bring something different to the table. All very good wide receivers. Over here you have Dont'e Thornton Jr. coming in from Oregon last year. Everyone tried to convince me he was going to be great. I told you he wasn't, and he wasn't. Okay, he was not great. He was not somebody you can rely on, but he's still very good depth. He's not a bad player. Kalen Webb, Chaz Nimrod, very good players. What you need to understand is this is a 5-star wide receiver over here, Mike Matthews. 5 stars, and he's third string. I love to see 5-star players third string. So shout out to Mike Matthews. The wide receiver room's deep. They're pretty good. Here's a 5-star transfer from LSU in Lance Hurd. He'll be starting, and you see it right here. Singer transfer. They're very Singer Latin up front. They have a lot of experience up front on the offensive line. What do we see, though? I watched the spring game. They looked terrible. Now, 3 of these guys weren't playing in the spring game, but that just tells me you don't have great depth or your defensive line is amazing. I like the defensive line, but they definitely don't have great depth on the offensive line. They don't have depth anywhere where it's essential. I want you to remember that. Tight ends. Holden Staes just came in from Notre Dame. Magically, he's the number 1 tight end in the transfer portal. Not a chance. Okay, he has 2 years of eligibility left. I think he starts. So, sure, Ethan Davis is here. I like Holden Staes a lot. I think he starts. Nico's obviously the starter. Gaston Moore, I told you, former walk-on, came over from UCF. And then you have a freshman in Merklinger, who, by the way, played pretty good in the spring game. Not terrible. Okay, running backs leave a lot to be desired. Nobody's super explosive, but Dylan Sampson's very dependable. He just seems like your average running back, not too spectacular. I'd actually put him in the bottom half in the SEC, if you ask me. Defensive line, studs. They have some monsters up front. They have monsters behind. If Omar Norman-Lott is not in your starting lineup, you have a really good defensive line. If Jackson Moy can come over and he's third string, this is a former starter from Stanford with 2 years of eligibility left, and he's third string, that's crazy. Jamal Wallace is a dancing bear. Jamal Wallace wrote to me directly on TikTok, said, "Yo, Rico, watch my film. Tell me what you think." I watched his film. That man is a special kind of athlete. I think he's like a former safety moved to defensive line. He's actually gained 100 pounds in the last 2 years while he was at JUCO. He gained 100 pounds. I kid you not. I think when he graduated high school, he was like 180, and now he's 280. He's great. He's a super athlete. I'm so impressed by him. His tape was one of the most impressive tapes I've reviewed, and he's way down here on the depth chart. I'm going to tell you guys, when I've interviewed and talked to Tyree West, I don't think he's a very bright individual. I'm surprised he's academically eligible. I don't know what program he's on or what's going on there, but that dude is dumb as rocks. But hey, he's a hell of a football player. He's been great. He's straight out of Georgia. Shout out to him. Just not that I don't know how that works. But anyways, you have like 12 defensive linemen at Tennessee, all of them just kind of meat eaters. I'm cool with it. James Pierce, number 1 player in the draft, supposedly a top 5 draft pick, phenomenal pass rusher. James Pierce is him. Told you Keenan Pili is great, so I believe in him. Arian Carter, young guy, not believe in him at all. Haven't really seen him on the field. Super athletic, but when I watched him last year, I wasn't that impressed. This is a little crazy. Now, speaking of a little crazy, their entire secondary essentially just disappeared on these cats. People hit the portal all day, and I'm going to show you they lost a ton of people in their secondary. Now, some homers will tell you they didn't lose anyone of consequence. I don't believe that. When you start getting Jermon McCoy to transfer in, a true freshman who started about 5 games last year at Oregon State, that guy should not be starting for you. And he is. All right, Jalen McMurray, I believe he came over from, where did Jalen come from? I don't want to click on it. I got to remember. Temple. Now we'll check. Jalen McMurray came from Temple. Yep. So he started I'd say 3 years at Temple, I thought he would be the starter, and they have him behind McCoy. So those are both very capable guys, but you're in the SEC against real offensive units, right? Real receivers. And some of these guys just don't look like they should be starting. Jacoby Thomas, cool dude. I think he's a cool kid, man. I don't know how he's starting. Ricky Gibson, young, talented players. I don't know how they're starting. I don't know what's going on here. And they have to start somebody. It's not going to matter, theoretically, because, number one, their offense is going to score a ton of points passing. Shout out to Josh Heupel and his offensive scheme. And they have a mean-ass front seven that's going to cause really bad passes, and they'll make plays. That's the idea. You're right. You'll cause disruption up front, and the secondary will benefit, and they'll make plays. They're not that good, though. Talent-wise, these guys don't stick out to me when I watch tape. And I've watched them all. I mean, yeah, all of them. Christian Harrison, like all these guys. I've obviously broken down tape on everybody, and especially the major teams. So let's go back and talk about the transfer portal. Let's talk about who they lost. So you go and lose Elijah Herring, team's leading tackler. Brandon Turnage, a really good athlete. He's going to Ole Miss. It's a kid who's a triple jumper in high school. I like him a lot. Tyler Barron, you lose an edge rusher, 6 sacks last year. Everybody's telling me he's the best edge rusher. I watched the tape. It's okay. I'm not too impressed with it, but it does hurt to lose a player of that caliber. You lose Mincy, not the end of the world, because you obviously found replacements and you're very senior Latin. It's all good, but this hurts right here. Look at this. 1, 2, 3 safeties. 4 safeties, 5 safeties, and a corner. You can't lose 5 safeties, and don't tell me these aren't good safeties. I know who they are. Well, Jack Lucero used to play wide receiver, but anyways, going to Arizona, going to Arkansas, going to South Florida, Louisville, another Louisville. You cannot lose these players. 5 safeties, you're not going to be the same. And they didn't all leave because they're not starters. Addison Nichols was a starter. Slated to be a starter, and he left, and he went to Arkansas. Congratulations, he's at Arkansas now. How about Warren Burrell? Used to start for this team. Went to Georgia Tech. He's going back home. It's one of the greatest out of a great North Gwinnett team that won the state title and had some phenomenal players on that team. Phenomenal players. I talked about it in a TikTok video just the other day. So it's bad, man. You can't lose 5 people in the secondary. You can't lose 2 starters on your offensive line. It just doesn't feel right. Now, when you come over here, though, who did they pick up? I talked about a majority of them. Holden Stays already. Jacoby Thomas, apparently he's a starter now. You lost 5 safeties. You're going to start the guy. But he's coming over from Middle Tennessee State, who used to get a lot of turnovers. But it just didn't feel like he would come in and start. Yes, he has the right prototypical size, 6'2", 190. You think he's going to start. You got another 6-foot-tall corner in Jermon McCoy, who actually played as a true freshman at Oregon State. Surprised he didn't follow his coaching staff over to Michigan State. I'm sure they're bummed out about it. But these guys should not be starters at Tennessee. They are, congratulations, but Tennessee should have 3 or 4 guys in that position group better than some true freshman contributors at another school or a group of 5 starter at another school. You feel me? Like, I don't mean to be negative about it, but that's just the way it really is. Chris Brazzell's a special talent. Tulane's probably going to miss the hell out of him. Jalen McMurray, a starter at Temple, like I said, for 3 years he's been over there. Zalance Hurd, what am I supposed to say? He's a complete monster, 5 stars. Jackson Moy used to be on the field at Stanford. Now he's in the rotation. Tommy Winton is a preferred walk-on. He played a little bit as a freshman at East Tennessee State. I watched a lot of East Tennessee State film for a couple of reasons. They have a bunch of players that hit me up in the DMs on TikTok. It's an FCS school, so usually I don't watch FCS schools. But they just hired a new head coach. He came over from Gardner-Webb, and he brought 20 transfers with him from Gardner-Webb. That has me go watch all the film on the team, see who's there, who shouldn't be there. And there's Tommy Winton. I've seen him on tape. He's okay. Didn't score a touchdown all year. Had some yards, maybe about 300 on the season. Not Tennessee caliber, but he's a preferred walk-on. It doesn't hurt. He's probably the 10th wide receiver on the depth chart. I don't understand that. And speaking of don't understand that, Andre Stewart has no business going back to Tennessee. And when I say back to Tennessee, this is a kid coming out of high school, goes the Power 5 route. He's convinced he can play at this echelon. I haven't seen it. So then he transfers to Townsend. You go down to the FCS level. You play there. He plays in about 4 or 5 games last year. 2 tackles. That's it. 2 tackles. Jumps back in the portal, and now he's magically back at Tennessee. Does not make sense to me. What makes sense to me is that he is a corner, and they need corners. So they're looking for corners that they know that they have a recruiting relationship with. This is a young man that used to take unofficial visits to Tennessee, and I remember thinking, oh my God, why are you making these trips? Why? Why are all these North Cobb guys convinced they can play at the Power 5 level, and none of the North Cobb players, and I'm saying none. They had 2 wide receivers, Malachi Singleton at quarterback, and now Andre Stewart, and a couple more. None of them have made it at the Power 5 level. And there's a reason they never won in the playoffs in Georgia high school football, but that's a whole nother story. So, how do I feel about Tennessee next year? Well, they start the season against Chattanooga Mocs, right? The Noogs. They start with the Noogs. They're going to beat them. No big deal. I actually obviously have them beating NC State, despite NC State being pretty good. Usually an ACC team can't beat Tennessee. They just have better fronts. They just have better players, better linebackers, better everything. I think Tennessee wins that game, no problem. Gonna go out and smash Kent State, like a Saturday night back in college, right? So they're gonna end up with 3 easy wins. Then they go on the road at Oklahoma. I don't think they match up well with Oklahoma. I really don't. Oklahoma's new to the SEC. I don't care. Oklahoma's really good. Oklahoma has an elite receiving corps. They have elite players, and I really like Oklahoma's depth. It'll be at home for Oklahoma. I just feel like Oklahoma matches up really well with Tennessee. I think Oklahoma wins that game. Then there's 2 weeks to prepare. They have a bye week, 2 weeks to prepare for Arkansas. Dare I say this is a trap game? Trap game because you got Florida and the week after that, and that's a rivalry game. It'll be at home. But either way, I think they still get it done, but just careful. I don't know if they cover the spread. Whatever it is, we won't be on it, okay? I don't think they can cover that spread. So you're looking at a win here, though, and a win here beating Florida. Once again, they don't match up well with Florida. I still have them beating Florida. They don't match up well with Florida. Florida and Graham Mertz, with all his receivers, they're going to be hitting on all cylinders. Florida was extremely efficient last year. I think Graham Mertz might have thrown 2 or 3 interceptions on the whole season. And if you look at last year, they lost to Florida, 29-16. Florida might have their number. We'll see if it's a difference. Playing at the Swamp is different from playing in Neyland Stadium. Then they have another showdown at home against Alabama. Once again, that means Florida has the potential to be a trap game because they might be looking forward to Alabama. I don't care either way. They don't match up well with Alabama. I have Alabama beating Tennessee, okay? Off week, bye week, they're playing Kentucky. If you think they're beating Kentucky, great. I can't go there just yet. I want them to. I'd imagine they would, but Kentucky has NFL wide receivers. And once again, this secondary is terrible, okay? Then they play Mississippi State. They should beat them handedly. Going on the road at Georgia, they don't match up well. They should lose that game. And then they end the season with easy games against UTEP and at Vanderbilt. Now, if you count all the wins, let's just say they win against every single team that isn't ranked. Let's make that clear. They beat Vanderbilt, UTEP, Mississippi State. That's 3. They beat Florida. That's 4. They beat Arkansas. That's 5. Kent State, 6, 7. That's 7 wins against all the unranked opponents. That includes Florida. Okay? 7 wins against the unranked opponents. Now, I have them beating NC State. That's 8 wins. Do you have them beating Oklahoma on the road and Kentucky? If you have them beating Oklahoma on the road and Kentucky, that's 9 and 10 wins. You've now hit your bet. Don't have them beating Georgia or Alabama, no matter what they do. So if I don't have them beating Georgia and Alabama, that's still 10 wins. That means they beat everybody else, no freak accidents. Their depth held up, and they came to play. I would tell you guys, I do not feel comfortable telling MVPs that they're going to beat every single person they're supposed to. And the reason is, when I watched them in the spring game, I saw 0 depth on that offensive line. I saw 0 depth in key position groups that is going to be really important for them to run the table like that. If you want them to beat everyone handedly, you need depth on the offensive line. You need depth in the quarterback room. You need depth in the running back room. And I don't see it. Running back looks anemic. Quarterback, terrible. Offensive line, terrible. Secondary, their starters are a problem. Let's not even talk about the backups. So for me, I don't think they match up well against teams like Kentucky and Oklahoma who have elite receiving cores. I don't know if they beat both of them. They have to beat both of them to make that bet hit, and I don't feel comfortable saying that. So I'm telling you guys right now, it's a lock. I have them at 9 wins. I have them splitting either Oklahoma or Kentucky. I have them only winning one of those games. So they're going to win one and lose the other. That puts them at 9 wins. And that means if they play clean the whole way and stay injury-free. And we don't know if that'll even happen. So I'm on the under. It's a lock. It's 9.5. One thing I will say about this bet, you can avoid this bet. And the reason you should avoid the bet is because we don't know how Nico looks behind a good offensive line. We have yet to see it all spring. Okay, we have yet to see it all spring, and we don't know how good this secondary is going to be. They could shock the world and go over, but I would be very hesitant to believe that's going to happen. I really don't. I'm not banking on it. No, I like the under. And if injuries occur, it solidifies the under even more. So I think this is a lock bet you have to make as MVPs. Remember, we're going to go at the end of the season, keep track of all the stats. I feel really good about anything in green. Obviously, you can miss really bad on a futures bet. You don't know because the season hasn't even started yet. I feel really good about the teams in green. Okay? Good luck. Please make your decisions wisely. Your friends don't know, but Rico knows. Peace, y'all.